What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. Summer is finally getting here. It seems like tomorrow will be summer already. Things are heating up, which means the weather's getting nicer and more electric skateboards are now coming out onto the market. So right here I have yet another board coming from Wowgo that we're going to take a look at today. Complete first impressions. I haven't even stepped foot on this board yet. I've reviewed pretty much every Wowgo model that has come out over the past couple of years and they all impress me, so hopefully this one won't let me down. We're taking a look at the Wowgo S2 Pro Poseidon edition. Now right off the bat, the S2 Pro is looking pretty promising. It looks like a pretty good option for a beginner to intermediate level board. I don't know the exact price on this because I am testing it out a little bit early, but I believe it could be falling between the $400 and $600 range, but don't quote me on that. Based off of the specs, we're working with two hub motors that are driving this board, which have a max power output of 1,000 watts each. The ESC and battery arrays over the past couple of boards have definitely gotten a lot better, so hopefully this thing will be riding really smooth just like its predecessors. In all four corners, you will find 90 by 54 millimeter wheels, and the board has a claimed range of 14 to 17 miles with a top speed of 25 miles per hour, and that is obviously why we are here to put that to the test. Alright guys, so here we go, a little bit closer look at the Wowgo S2 Pro Poseidon edition. I believe the graphics on here is why they are naming this board the Poseidon. They got the trident here and sort of like wave graphics. Pretty cool looking board. This deck is similar to the previous AT2 that I reviewed. It's a mixture of bamboo, Canadian maple, and fiberglass. I actually really liked the previous board, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to like the flex and the feel of this as well. The trucks in the rear and up front are both dubbed another Poseidon edition to this board, so they might have went through a little bit of a redesign there. And then the top of this board, working with some standard grip tape. It's a fine texture, so this board would actually be pretty nice to ride barefoot. It's not going to rip up your skin too much. Passion on the go, and then they got another little trident logo up here in the front, really leaning into that whole Poseidon theme. But the board looks pretty good. Alright guys, before we start riding around on this thing and getting a feeling for it, I want to share a real quick story. I'm going to elaborate about this a little bit more on a future podcast. But I want to bring awareness to wearing protective gear. 2 days ago, I was riding around a new mountain bike that I got around the neighborhood, and long story short, I got hit by a car. This dude in a Jeep completely ran me over. Luckily, not my body. My legs are not broken, but they could have been very easily. So the new bike is destroyed. It's at a shop getting fixed right now, but I just wanted to use that quick story as a reason to remind you guys to wear your protective gear. So I'm wearing a helmet as much as I possibly can. And then also shout out to Lazy Rolling. They sent out an armored jacket and an armored hoodie. This is their hoodie right here. It fits super well, and what's cool about it is that it's made out of Kevlar. So if I take a spill, this thing is going to be a lot more wear resistant than a regular hoodie or a t-shirt or just your bare skin. You can also outfit their jackets and hoodies with pads, so if you are even like riding around a motorcycle or something at a low speed, it's going to give you way better protection than not wearing anything at all. The guys at Lazy Rolling actually gave me a code. If you use code TalonSci on their website, I believe you save $20 off of your order, and I highly recommend checking them out. I have like 4 of their hoodies now, and I plan on wearing them whenever I'm reviewing things like electric skateboards that go 25 miles an hour here in the future. So, I'm going to start up my tracking app, remote, same as all of the other Wowgo boards, scroller thumb wheel. I like these. Alright, this doesn't have the auto turn on feature. Someone pointed out on another video that I did not use that feature, so this one doesn't seem to have it, but turn the board on. It's also good to point out that this board has a little bit of a kicktail, so you can set it down gently and pick it up. Something I like to mention about these boards. Now let's see how this thing does. So here we are in mode 1. Board feels really smooth as expected. Ooh, brakes are actually pretty strong in mode 1. A lot of boards that I test, when you have it in a lower speed mode, the brakes just don't quite grip up as much as they could when they're on a higher mode. but that felt pretty good. We're on to mode 2 now. So mode 2 is feeling pretty good. It says on the controller that we were doing about 18 miles per hour there. We will of course see in the end. Brakes feel really good too. It almost comes like skidding to a halt because it's gripping so hard. And that, in my opinion, is a great thing. You can change the modes while you're rolling, just like the previous board that I tested. Here's mode 3. Now, since we were on the topic of the previous board, the new Wowgo All-Terrain, that board probably has me a little bit spoiled now coming back to a lower end model. Not saying that in a negative way at all. This thing probably costs much less and it's more of just a street board, whereas the All-Terrain, you get different options. You have belt motors if you're into belts. I personally am, and I was running the cloud wheels on that board. So the deck on this S2 Pro feels pretty good, just like the other decks that I've tested out in the past. Not quite as flexy as the longer all-terrain board, and the wheels on here are pretty standard skate wheels, so it's not going to be sucking up the cracks and bumps as much as the cloud wheels that I ran in the AT2 video. Since I keep mentioning that, you guys can find it right up there in the corner in the card. Let's bump up into the T turbo mode. This should give us our top speed. So turbo mode there feels pretty good. It's not like blow your socks off fast. My actual feeling of how fast we were going doesn't quite feel like it was 25 miles per hour, but we'll see by the end of the test. Overall so far though, very smooth board, just as I would expect coming from Wowgo. And we're gonna keep on riding this thing until it dies. Alright guys, we are about 4 miles into the test and I have a few things to comment on about the Wowgo 2S Pro. I feel like I keep calling it the S2 Pro. There's so many different names for these boards. One thing that I would like to note is how quiet this board is. Obviously a hub motor is going to be quieter than a belt motor, but this one seems just like extra silent for some reason. The power delivery and everything, acceleration curve and braking, it all seems really smooth, but there's no extra noise, which is very nice. There are some places where people frown upon riding these in public areas. Makes no sense to me, but if that is the case, this thing is going to be a lot stealthier than, say, the all-terrain board that I reviewed last. Another thing that I'll note though is that the deck feels pretty good as far as like the rigidity of it. It has a little bit of flex to it. It has a little bit of concavity to it as well, so I feel really locked in there. But with the deck and the wheels, this thing is beating up my feet a little bit, getting a lot of vibration, and you sort of feel it in your toes after a couple of miles, but that's not something that I'm not really used to, so it doesn't bother me much. To someone who is a new electric skateboard rider, it may bother you a little bit, but you'll get used to it in the long run. Now I think for the rest of the test, I'm gonna cruise around in mode number 3. That way we're not just burning through the batteries as fast as possible. We're obviously not gonna get the longest range out of it at that point. So we're just gonna go into cruise mode. I'm actually gonna drop this camera down and pick up a different one. And yeah, we'll just cruise around until this thing is dead and I will come back with my final thoughts. Alright guys, I'm back from my initial testing of the Wowgo 2S Pro Poseidon edition, and I have some good news and some bad news. The bad news is that my tracking app stopped working a few miles into my testing. The good news, however, is that I did actually get the chance to look at it, to check my top speed before it completely turned off. So at that 4 mile mark where I stopped and gave you guys an update, the board was registering a top speed through GPS of 24.8 miles per hour. So it's almost right on par with what they're saying, 25 miles per hour. I didn't feel like the board was underpowered at all. It all felt pretty solid, and I'm pretty happy with the top speed, especially given the fact that this is sort of like a entry-level to intermediate style board. Now overall the ride was a little bit bumpier because of the normal skate wheels. Like I said, I just came off of a review of the cloud wheels on a much longer board that had a little bit more flex to it, but really can't complain too much about this thing. I actually went onto Google Maps and retraced my entire lap that I did around all of those parks and everything, and we ended up going roughly 12 miles or 12.3 miles overall. And towards the end of the testing there, at about the 10 mile mark, I did notice some battery sag, which isn't the greatest thing ever. Again, I was riding in mode 3 the entire time. I was trying to extend the range of this thing as much as possible, but around the 10 mile mark, I noticed that there was a little bit of a dip in power. And then by the end of my testing, I was at like 12 miles. I actually had to push a little bit to get back to the van, which isn't a huge deal, but it's just something to keep in mind. All of those factors are going to depend on the type of hills that you're riding, and where I was riding there were a good amount of hills. I was riding pretty quickly too once I got out onto some smooth asphalt on the streets there, so 12 miles for a board that you're probably going to just go out and have fun on and possibly even commute on. I would say that that's not too bad. If you're a lighter rider, or if you're riding a lot of flat level areas like say by a shoreline, by a beach, then chances are this board is going to take you a lot further than it did me. But overall, I think it's a great package. The speed and specs and everything seem right on par. I'm glad to see that manufacturers in this year are no longer exaggerating the specs like they have in some years past. This board gets a thumbs up from me. I'm probably going to pass it along to a friend of mine who likes to ride skateboards as well, because he basically is like long-term testing these boards. I have so many different boards that I ride all the time, so I like to pass these off to friends. That way they get a chance to put a lot more miles on them. And if I ever run into an issue with the board, I tend to go back into the comment section or description of videos and sort of lay out what went wrong, if anything. If you don't see any updates on some of my older electric skateboard videos, then the boards are still doing fine, and it's something that I would still recommend. So this one gets a recommendation from me if you're looking for an entry-level to intermediate-level board. And if you guys have any questions on this thing, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what other boards are out there that you want to see me review next. I've been getting a lot of emails about scooters, and I'm not like super interested in scooters, but I have the opportunity to bring you guys some content on stuff like that. So if that's something that you'd want to see, let me know and I can probably make some arrangements. That's going to be all for today. If you are new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every single week. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next one.